Hey guys, this is Stephanie Maskowski, and this is my presentation for English 2 with John Drake. Columbus discovered America is still to this day taught to students at a very young age in grade schools across the United States. The present-day Native Americans argue that it would be impossible for Columbus to discover America because it was already inhabited by millions of Native Americans. Despite this as an obvious fact, Columbus is portrayed as the hero of discovery. This is an example of one of the countless numbers of inaccuracies taught in schools or read in newspapers or seen on the television news. From the Native Americans' perspective, Columbus's arrival was the beginning of the end of their culture, religion, and freedom. From a white European's perspective, Columbus discovered an opportunity for freedoms and wealth. Columbus Day still appears on the calendars. Greed, lust for power, and intolerance for foreign traditions and religions exist today and influence the government and military policy. News media is often a tool used to steer the general public's perceptions, and this is what happened to the Native American culture. Ignorance often leads to misunderstandings, biases, and in general misaccuracies. This can be easily exploited by those that are motivated by greed and power. Most of the Plains Indians were aware of what happens when the white settlers arrive. They knew that the eastern tribes were pushed out of their homelands and relocated. They knew that white man's government was going to take all of what they had. This was a matter of survival for the Native Americans' way of life, and many of other races of people. Their reactions, unfortunately, were extreme. Not much different than any of us would do if our homes were taken away. The white settlers were misled in that they were given or sold the land to farm and make it their home. Many white Americans' point of view, the Native Americans were red savages and subhuman. It's well documented in the newspapers of the times that prominent and well-respected military or political personnel were quoted to the detriment of the Native Americans. General Sherman, a Civil War hero, is quoted as saying, "We must act with vindictive earnestness against the Sioux, even to the extermination of men, women, and children." General Harney said after Colonel Baker's massacre of the Peace Tribe that the children are nits and that they will become lice. If accounts of what occurred are mostly one-sided and the deaths are involved, the general public's view can be very much influenced by the heroic Civil War generals and the respected congressmen. White immigrants towards the West were often made without any consideration to the indigenous people already living there. Larger businesses with financial backing and government and military support saw the Native Americans as nuisances. They got in the way of the profit. Support was gained through newspapers that described the Native Americans as a savage race that infests the country. The efforts to peacefully gain rights to the lands, including the sacred Black Hills, from the Indians were often done so by deception and manipulation. The Treaty of 1868 gave the Sioux a promise that no white man was allowed within their reservation. This was quickly ignored when Custer was sent into the Black Hills to locate a site for a new fort. Custer turned the illegal invasion into a gold-seeking expedition. Once the word got out that there was gold in the Black Hills, thousands of miners, entrepreneurs, and adventurers overran the area without any regard to the Native American rights or religion. Their knowledge of the Native Americans was based upon what they had learned from the news, portraying the Indians as primitive and unintelligent. Stories of brutal attacks on settlers were common in the newspapers. When Red Cloud realized the treaty he participated in signing was not what he and the other Indian representatives were led to believe, he demanded to speak face-to-face with President Grant. For those of us who have grown up with cell phones and social media, we are used to how quickly information can travel today. But for the people living through the 1600s, there was no federal mail. There was only word of mouth. There were newspapers, primarily local, But a greater portion of the population was unable to read and was dependent on others to tell them the news. Newspapers were in many cases politically driven and in a social structure driven by the money and greed that could be easily manipulated. Like the game of telephone, accounts of what was happening in the West would be distorted, exaggerated, and completely changed to suit the needs of the government, the railroad, or the population expanding west into the Native American territories. In 1844, the telegraph is invented. The telegraph would change things dramatically. Instead of depending on a man on a horseback delivering letters, messages could now be sent over hundreds of miles in minutes, but it would take a long time for the wires to be extended to all the places they needed to be. Not to mention they were easily interrupted or destroyed